Our world continues to change and push us in ways we have not been challenged before. On this show, we talk about these challenges, how to be aware of them, face them, and overcome them in your life. This is David Waldas, creator of the Aligned Living System.
And I'm Nick Musica, Aligned Living Coach. Welcome to the Aligned Living System podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Aligned Living System podcast. This is David Waldas here, and we have our guest, James Davis Massey. Excited for James to be on. We're actually going to do 3 segments. And so this first one is going to be basically introducing you all to James. And he's going to share a bit about, we're basically 3 weeks into the 10-week program, and we did a session before that, so 4 sessions in. And I met James through the Bowies and stuff that I often talk about on here, where we met through the mastermind and through the different events, and really just connected. James lives in Denver, where I was living when we first met, and we have a ton in common. He's actually an executive coach and a culture consultant, right? And he created a business and a teaching called Human Blueprint. Which I'm sure he'll share a little bit on here about. But, as we got to know each other, it seemed like there was just a lot we have in common, a lot we can offer together, future potential for us to collaborate on things. And it seemed like a no-brainer. And so I'm excited to introduce you all to James, for him to share about his experiences with our work together, for him to share about his experience with his work. And so welcome, James.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. It's a pleasure to be on, and it's been great getting to know you more, and also to applying your systems, which I think is a new way of helping people be in the world. So I'm super excited to be led through the 10-week program.
Awesome. And so you already work a lot with culture. You work a lot with people understanding themselves, and executive coaching, and whether it's business or personal, all of that. You work with corporations. So this has been your world. And so can you share a little bit about what Human Blueprint is too, just so that we have a sense of you as we're diving into this?
Yeah, absolutely. No, the Human Blueprint kind of started about 8 years ago. Been doing this coaching and facilitating and consulting internally and externally in organizations for almost 20 years. But about 8 years ago, I said, I have to do this Human Blueprint work, which is really helping humans be the best version of themselves. And I always talk about it from leading from the inside out. Mm-hmm. And so often when I was working inside organizations, we were trying to teach leaders and managers how to lead through just slapping skills and things on top of them when they didn't know how to be authentically themselves. So when I talk about leadership,
do these things, people will respond, rather than if you work on this stuff inside yourself and show up as this person. That's really where these aren't tricks.
Yeah, they would dump. It's like I always talk about, they would just open your head and like dump stuff in it, and then you were like, oh, I get back to work, and you're like, oh, what does this mean? How do I make this authentically me? And lead from a place that's really truly themselves, right? And so I think that's when
make eye contact and smile, and that creates rapport. Right. Okay.
Yes. Well, then people would like really turn that on, right? Like, okay, now I need to look at them and nod my head. And I'm like, oh my God, it was so clinical, and it was very inauthentic, right? And so people felt that. I mean, you can feel that, right? When your leader is like very clinical with who they're trying to be, because it's all coming from their head.
Yeah. And it works to a certain degree, but it maxes out so fast. And it's funny. I remember when I was first recording my first videos, and I had this guy come in and film for me, and he was just sitting there on his phone while I'm talking, and it was so hard for me to share my stuff. And so probably after the 5th take, he put his phone down, and he just started nodding his head while I was talking. I'm like, oh, this is great. No, I can just.
But he really wasn't paying attention.
He was listening at all.
No.
But it maxes out. Like, sure, that's real, but it also maxes out so fast. And if you're not authentic, if you're not showing up as you, if you're not really caring, if you're not really open, if you're not really safe inside yourself, all that stuff, it just maxes out, right?
No, absolutely. And I think, and you're leading with your whole body. Like I talk about that all the time too, not just with your head, but your whole body. Because that's our house we live in, right? And so it's like, how do we make sure we take care of all of us and not just our head?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of similarities in our perspective, right? And so, we had some great conversations leading up to this. And so, what made you decide that you wanted to go ahead and do the line living work with me and, take that jump?
Yeah, I think, doing, working as a consultant and coach, you have to take care of yourself, right?
Hmm.
And my framework is I talk about the head, the heart, and soul, and the
Hmm.
body of a
Yeah,
leader, right?
yeah.
And those are three data points that we have. And I was like, okay, it's time to, I'm a father of two kids and a husband and like business owner, and I'm like, okay, I have to continue to grow and
Hmm.
learn about myself. And so when I met you, I was like, this is a cool guy, and I love just how you show up in a room.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and then I purchased your book, and I was like, oh, this is what I loved about you have this new way of like connecting with, the energy and sources in your body and the bigger world, but
Hmm.
you also have the science behind it, which I think
Hmm.
is really critical in our day and age for those folks that are like, what's this about? So I was when I after I met you, looked at your book, talked to some folks that you'd kind of worked with. I was like, okay, this guy's legit. I really
Right.
need to check it out.
Nice.
And I also think, like you were saying earlier, I think there's a lot of overlap with our work
Sure. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of helping leaders lead from the inside out. And that's what I've been doing over the last 3 or 4 weeks is really connecting with myself in a different way that I
Yeah.
haven't done in a while.
Right. Right. That's great. Yeah. I mean, it is funny, like the idea of our own personal development. And I think for a long time, I didn't invest that much in it. I just feared I'd just keep reading and studying things. And then when I started investing with working with people that like, it's such a needle mover.
Mhm.
It's like, and I think when we're coaches, we really tend to think that like, oh, well, I'm always doing this work, I'm in it. But that level of having that accountability or working with people that have systems that really work for us. It's and all the people that are the most successful, like I've coached some really incredibly successful clients, they're all about receiving support. They're not, none of them, like, I think there's probably a lot of their breakthrough moments when they stopped thinking they could do it themselves, right? When they stopped thinking like, well, I coach people all the time. Of course I can handle this. Like
Yeah.
having that piece, like it's actually a sign, I think, of going for excellence rather than a sign of like needing support. Like it's yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
and the thing, I've, throughout my life, I've had therapists, I've had
mhm,
spiritual coaches, I've had sports coaches when I was, really into running. And so I've
yeah.
always said, I can't do this alone. And when I hit up against a wall and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of stuck, whether it's spiritually,
Mhm.
physically, I'm like, okay, there's someone out there that can help be a catalyst for me and help me take
Yeah.
to the next level. And that's what I feel like, meeting you
Hmm.
is we do have so many, our values are a lot in common. And I think how we think of human development, this new
Hmm.
era of human development,
Yeah.
the world is ready for, right? I think
Right. Right.
it's not about talk therapy or just the mindset coaching. It's about whole body coaching.
Yeah.
So,
The full embodiment of, right.
mhm.
Yeah. I love that you brought up the science of it too, because I often forget about the science. I'm like, oh, that's right. That's great that it all matches. And, of course it does, right? Because it's legit. And so like it backs it, but I often forget about it. And it's funny when I wrote that book,
Yeah,
I was like, oh, let me, reverse engineer it and basically look up the science that explains why what we do works. And so it was really fun to piece it all together, but then I often forget about it. So I'm glad you're bringing the science into it, because it does make it such a legitimate thing. And for those of us that are, more, linear type thinkers, like we need that often to dive in. We need that to go for it,
hmm
because we don't want to just go, oh, I'll trust it. Like what the heck is actually happening here? And
And
so,
and what I think and I agree with that. And what I love about who you are is like that you have that analytical brain that you can bring in. But you also have this all-knowing,
mhm,
this tapping into your divine blueprint and this bigger thing that we're in the earth,
yeah,
and allowing that to relying on the wisdom that comes from something bigger than us, I
mhm,
think is so key in this new world. I think we think we're so disconnected from other people. But I talk
right,
about when we work in culture and organizations of the ecosystem which we work in, not just the organization, but also this community and the bigger, like I think we forget sometimes that we're part of something bigger than us. So I love that
yeah,
about
yeah,
the aligned living
absolutely.
system too. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. Like when we met too, I could feel what a strong empath you are and how
Mm.
much it helps you do your work, but
Yeah.
also the cost of that too.
Mm.
Right? Like it's what gives you your gifts to be able to help people so much. And a lot of what Aligned Living about learning to use those gifts in a way that support us too, not just turning ourselves, giving ourselves away in the process. And so, we're about a third of the way through the 10-week program now. And so what are you experiencing so far? What has shown up for you and what
What is it? There's a lot, so I'm just taking a moment to. So, so a couple of things. I think the visualizations, meditations that, so far we've been through the three different versions of a meditation, which is connecting with energy and the energy centers of, my body. And what I would say, like you said, I'm an empath, right? And that's what is brought me success, I think, in the human blueprint, because I connect with people. I create a space where people feel safer. And oftentimes, as we've talked about, like wherever I go, people are like, want to tell me everything. And it's like,
yeah, yeah.
that's my superpower, but it's also become, a little bit too much, like where it causes especially when I'm working with large events and I'm leading and
Hmm.
I get overwhelmed and
Yeah.
anxious because I'm taking so much of that external environment. Um, and recently, since we've been working, is we've talked about like creating space just in safety in my body,
Hmm. Hmm.
versus taking on all the energy and thoughts and the
Emotions.
heroing emotions, all the things, and thinking I need to take care of everybody.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I logically know that in the work that I do with others, and I logically know it here, but I think this process with you has given me a new awareness of my body,
Hmm.
um, that I knew but didn't. Now I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in a
If
different
that
way, in
and know in a different way, right? And I
an
think
experiential way. Yeah.
experiential way. And I also have resources now, before it's like, um, just change your thoughts, right? You're thinking of, this negative thought, being aware of it, and then how do you shift it or be present with it and allow? But now it's like, okay, where do I go in my body to
Hmm.
tap into safety?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I take my awareness from my thoughts and just try to get in my body. So
Hmm.
I think that's been a really useful tool. Another thing that I mentioned to you, at one
But
point,
real quick, James, if I just
yeah.
had something what you just said too is making me think about this is, you were already really successful at what you're doing, right?
Hmm.
And so one of the things I think that's so interesting, and I know I had such an intense experience with this as well, is that when our energy field set up as an empath so that we're not able to really hold our own fully. And again, we don't know what that is until we have the experiential feeling, right? We think we are, and then we go, oh, wait, there's a whole nother level I can have of me bringing this and offering to this all these people. Then having that response to it, me being aware of it, still having that empathic ability, but being able to turn their volume down and turn my volume up. And when we
Mm.
learn to do that is, obviously that's what we're doing together. Like the capacity that we were hitting before of how many people we can help and how big a room we can be in, or how much attention we can have on ourselves, like it changes that capacity. And that feeling of just being wiped out after an experience, or I need to really protect myself, I need to figure out what I can be in and what I can't be in, like to be able to have the volume control of how much is coming in, um like it keeps us from maxing out, or changes the level that we max out at, if that makes sense too.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think, and what I like about your approach too is that it's this awareness that I can actually, I do a meditation in the morning and at night, and also sometimes during the day, based on
Mhm.
the homework you've given me. But I also like last week or yesterday, the last 2 days I've been in Seattle, at a workshop, doing a teaming, workshop and a strategy event. And
That you're
there's
helping
moments
lead.
I was leading it, yeah, and I
Yeah.
was leading it, and so I get almost like I dropped into my body, I dropped into my root chakra, and I was like and in my heart, like I was connecting with the earth. So I can do that quickly, in those moments of like, okay, what am I going to do next? Um, and because one of my, I think, superpowers of working with groups is I have a plan going in, but I also
Hmm.
now I've been able, I can connect and go with where the people need to go, but also provide guardrails. And so sometimes I'm like, I get so into that. And then now I'm like, wait, I'm going to slow down,
Hmm.
connect with myself, not allow the group to always drive that. And so this new sense of awareness of when am I, how much of the external impact of others' emotions, feelings, thoughts, energy am I allowing to manage me and letting
Hmm.
me manage that has been really helpful.
Yeah, and I think then we're realizing that we're being deliberate and we're being intentional. And the interesting thing about when we receive information empathically is it feels like it's magic, right? Like we can feel this
Mhm.
is what this group wants from me. And we seldom go into discernment and go, is this the right thing to bring to this group? Yes, this is what they're desiring right now. And if I just follow that, it'll have its own value. But there's also something else that I think is really important. And from me knowing where we're going, it's actually more important than what they're wanting right now. And so I can direct that. And it makes me think, I remember this experience where there was somebody that had done something that really let me down. And I was pretty frustrated with them. And I kept feeling them kind of reaching out to me energetically. I have that awareness and I could feel their presence. And they wanted me to let them off the hook. They wanted me to kind of go, no, it's okay. And what they did, it just wasn't okay. So I wasn't going to just let them off the hook with it. And when I felt them come in, it felt like something was horribly wrong. Like, I don't know, did they have something bad happen? And there was a sense of like, I picked up my phone to text them to make sure they were okay, even though the day before they had really done something that just wasn't okay. And it was super frustrating. And I stopped myself and I was like, huh, like this is that impulse that because it came in like a magical feeling way, like it took me a minute to remember to be discerning in it and go, oh, wait a minute. Like, is the right action for me to just respond and go, oh my God, what's going on? How can I help? Or is it right? Like, if they had called me and said, hey, I'm having a really tough time. Can you help me? I would have gone, not right now, but because it came emotionally, energetically, like there was a part of me that started, like, I literally had my phone in my hand about to text them. And I stopped myself and like, what am I doing? Like, this is just communication. It's not magic. It's not, the divine coming through and going, you need to go help this person. But because it comes in that way, or we're reading a group and they're like, oh, the group wants this, I can feel it and I can navigate it versus actually, I know where we're headed and I know what the right thing is. The communication is they want this. My knowing says I need to deliver this. And it's a really
Yes.
fascinating part of being able to recognize energy and emotions and our empathic ability as communication rather than divine guidance, because it's not
Mhm.
the same thing as our intuition. We're reading other people's desires. It's just them communicating with us, not our higher self communicating with us.
Yeah. No, I think what you're saying is all this discernment of like what is intuition, what's, something bigger than us, and what's, reading the room and what they, emotionally, what are they doing, right? And
Yeah,
so,
our empathic
yeah,
ability to feel
empath
that.
ability to, yeah.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and yes, I think all of this is, I'm still playing with it in terms
Mhm.
of like, um, what does it feel like, you know, when I'm putting like a subtle wall up, right? That's like
Mhm.
I'm available, but I'm not available, right? Like I'm,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
before it was like always like people I think saw me as always available
yeah, yeah.
because I kind of walked around with kind of that. And now it's like, it's so funny because then I had, when I was last week, I had dinner. I was sitting at the bar having dinner and I was like, I don't want to talk to anybody. Somebody kept trying to talk to me. And I just kind of like, in a nice way, and before I would have felt like in my empath is like, oh, this person must be lonely or, and then I was like, well, no. And I said hello and I kind of just kept to myself and it was, energetically, I kind of shifted into
Hmm.
a different, like, yeah, and so it's
I'm
just been
busy right
interesting.
now. Like,
I'm
yeah, I'm
busy,
not
like, and not
available.
even though I wasn't busy,
Yeah.
like I was
Well,
sitting
you
there,
were though.
busy. Yes, like you're saying,
And
made
that's the
myself.
thing, right? Honoring yourself. Like my time with me, I'm actually busy. Just because somebody else is sitting here making this important doesn't mean I'm not sitting here with myself making this important.
That's right.
Yeah. It's such an interesting piece. And when we're on outside, as empaths, for people to engage with however they want, like, we're always, open for business versus, you know what, sometimes I'm not. Sometimes what I'm doing in here, even if it's just resting and resetting and not being on for everybody else, like that has huge value. And as an empath, like until we learn how to regulate our field and regulate the way we're showing up and read what's actually happening, not just the idea of, oh, this person wants me, like, and I can feel it inside me, so I got to give it to them. Um, like we take back our inner world, really.
Well, I've always had a value around too of, you know, caretaking and making sure
Mhm.
people feel okay and are
Yeah, of
found
course.
welcome and included and but I believe at the same time I believe that people can take care of themselves and they
Mhm.
have,
Yeah.
they're resourceful and I don't need to be that for them. And then so I've been playing with that too around, I don't have to, I'm not going to go out of my way to, but it's a healthy balance of
Yeah.
being approachable and inclusive without taking away from me, right? I think
Yeah.
it's
Right. That's great.
um so I've just been noticing, which has been interesting.
Right. And as empaths, we often feel like, oh my God, I'm letting them down, I'm shutting them out, because our experience has been so different. But the truth is, from the outside, it just looks like, oh, they must be busy. Oh, they must be
Hmm.
engaging because we see other people doing that all the time, right? Like, oh, now it's not a good time to talk to that person. They're busy. Like I can feel that they're not real available right now. And that's fine. Like
Yeah.
we don't go like, oh my, why aren't you available for me? But when we're used to being that for other people, like it feels like almost like we're being rude by taking care of ourselves until we work through it and go, oh, wait a minute, they're not even having that experience. This is
Hmm.
me just in the habit of giving away myself and my energy, and prioritizing everybody else's stuff over my own. Um, there's the time and place for that, but it's not always.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, I think it's that intentionality around what am I doing right now?
Yeah, yeah,
Do
that's
it, am
great.
I doing this because I'm pleasing, going into that pleaser mode and that
Mhm.
hero mode?
Yeah,
Or and it's okay to do that if I'm intentionally, and like I think you said, it's like if I'm doing it from a place of love versus like I have to or I need to, or, um, they need me and I need to do that. So I think it's been just discerning those subtle changes that
Mhm.
are very impactful, one for taking care of myself and also being helping others take care of themselves.
Yeah, and so yeah, that whole piece of the self-care, that component that comes with this, and the one of the things that happens really quick when we do this work is, at first there's this great reprieve. We're like, oh God, it's so nice not to have the world just rushing in on me all the time, to actually have a filter, a sense of like I can still hear it, but as I turn the volume way down out there, turn the volume way up here, so I'm hearing myself a lot louder than everybody else. But then there's this next kind of phase of the calls coming from inside the building, we call it, where our stuff comes up, and all of a sudden we're like, oh God, I feel like I'm leaking. Other people, I'm like, oh shit, that's my stuff, not other people's. And we tend to work through stuff so fast, though. We've talked about the idea of like when we're internal, like we become very protective of this space. And when our own stuff even comes up inside it, we go, yeah, I'm not okay with that thinking anymore. Or I'm not okay with engaging in this way. I'm not okay with limiting myself because of the way other people want me to be or the way I think they do. So you've experienced a lot of freedom, right? From that. Do you want to share anything about that part? Does that question make sense? And
Yeah, maybe you can tell me the question again because I have a lot I've have for, but ask me again. I want to get clarity on what I'm.
yeah, and then feel free to answer it however you want too. It's funny. I think that sometimes I feel like I've been on a lot of podcasts lately, and I'm like, I don't think I answered their question at all. Like whatever was
Yeah.
coming
I
through.
want to make sure that I'm answering your question. No. This, what I guess the thing that's like there's a couple of things. One is with this work that we've been doing, and maybe it's just because my life circumstances right now. I've had family moving near me that hasn't been here, and things have come up, but like things that I had thought I had resolved are actually coming up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That I was like, oh shit, why is it? Whoa, that was, and then um and the story I'm making up, and we'll see how this evolves, but like what I want to believe is happening is there's healing going on at a different level, or awareness that's at a different level.
yeah.
Because I
Which
think I've solved it before intellectually, but not in my body,
Yeah,
right?
which
I
means it
feel
still
like
affects
in
us
my
all the
heart,
time.
it does, right? And I think I've like tried to like mask it with like, it's fine. It's
Yeah.
okay. I'll be okay. This person's great. And so, you know what I'm
They're
saying?
fantastic. I really like them. Fuck.
Yes. But fucking assholes. I hate you. But why am I, and then the
If I'm
question I've been
really
asking,
authentic, You know that love thing? I was
Yeah.
like, I kind of fucking hate you, but
I
we're gonna be
guess.
authentic.
Well, it's like, why are you in my life? You know what I mean? Like, am I in your life because I think that's what you should? And I'm not saying writing people out of my life, but at the same time, it's like I've had this new awareness of like, what am I getting from this relationship?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but you know, one of the things I want to share, which I think is interesting, and it just happened this week as well, is what I want to share is like I think a little bit of this more self-awareness of like when I get upset, I've always been a pleaser or try to mask it.
yeah, yeah.
So this past week in Seattle, I just finished the first day of the workshop that I was leading, and I was like, I need to get a workout in. And so I have a membership at Orange Theory, right?
Okay, gotcha.
For just when I travel, like, and so I was like, okay. I got back to my hotel at 5:15. I looked, there's a class at 5:45. I called them and I'm like, can I come in? They're like, yes. So I get changed really quickly, and I'm like, I just want to work out. So I get there, and it's traffic's horrible, right? And I took an Uber, get there, and it started at 5:45. It was 5:51.
Yeah,
And the woman at the desk was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I can't let you in. We have a 5 minute rule." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Like I like almost lost it. Like normally I'm like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like I took a $20 Uber here, and she's like, "I'm really sorry, we can't." She's like, "I can put you in the 7 o'clock class, but if I don't do that, you're gonna lose your money." And I was like, "Oh my," I said, "I really can't have this conversation right now." And I just walked out.
yeah,
And then I was like, "Oh, did I handle that okay?" Like I'm like that. But normally I would have said, "Oh, that's fine. I'm okay." But I wasn't rude, but I just like so I walked out. I
yeah,
decided to walk back to my hotel. 20 minutes later, I get a call from the woman.
yeah,
And she was like, "James, I'm so sorry that happened. I'm going to refund your total money." I didn't push her to do this, right? It was one of
yeah,
those things that I could have said, "No, you need to give me my money back." And I was like, "You know what? I'll figure out a way to deal with it, but it's not going to be right now." That is different than how I would have showed up probably before our
right,
work together, because I would have been kind of felt into, I was kind of being my authentic self, right? Like
right,
I
right.
wasn't rude, but I was like, so I'm sorting through
This
that.
doesn't feel okay to me, basically.
It doesn't feel okay, and I think it's wrong. I'm
Yeah,
not going to fight you and make you because it's probably the corporate guidelines, um, but what they mean not having to please or I was authentic. I wasn't rude. I said walked out and I was going to email the manager later and she called me back. So that was really kind of cool that
yeah. It
I didn't try to
resolved
make
through
it
you
resolved
resolving.
itself without trying to like
Yeah.
force it.
But you resolved it
Um,
inside yourself, which allowed it to resolve.
hmm
Right. And I think that's such a key component of this. And when you were saying that about, the idea of like, just maybe look at some of my relationships. Like what it really is a deeper level of our authenticity. Right. And so when we have
mm,
stuff like, oh, I've resolved that, to the degree that I need to in order for it to become comfortable for me to be able to kind of shut it down. And that's what we do. It's not a judgment. Like we've all done that. I've done that. And then we
mm,
we reach a deeper level in ourselves. We go, you know what? I'm not okay with this level of resolution with it. It's not as authentic as I need it to be. And when we get
mm,
that clear with ourselves, we have to resolve it at a deeper level. And it means, well, now I need to have a conversation I wasn't planning on having. Now I need to
mm,
address some things, and now I need to not show up in a way maybe I was showing up before that I'm just not okay showing up in anymore. Because I have to be true to myself. I have to be authentic about what I'm really feeling and being rather than going, "Oh, it's fine. No, no, it's fine." Right.
Yes, everything's fine. Yeah, you know what fine stands for.
Yeah, I sure do. Yeah, that fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and
Yeah.
emotional. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's funny. Um, and so like the freedom that comes from that, and people listening might go, "Oh gosh, that seems really hard," but it's not, right? Because when we're in that place, it just feels normal and good. And maybe it's not easy to have the conversation, but God, it's so freeing. And it's like and when we go, I didn't, and all this, everything that we're talking about here is about internal expansiveness. When we have an internal expansiveness, we have more freedom for us to show up, more kind of love for ourselves and other people, more self-expression, more aliveness, more fulfillment. And so that space that we're creating inside, like we don't know we're closing it down. When we go, oh no, no, that's fine. That's not fine. You can ignore me again. No, that's fine. Let's talk about your stuff again. We don't need to worry about me, right? Like our inner world gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and we get more and more locked in and more uncomfortable and more limited. And then when we go, you know what? Maybe I'm not okay with this. Maybe I actually need all this space inside me. And it starts with this level of authenticity and truth with myself about what I'm okay with and what I'm not okay with. And I tricked myself into thinking I was okay with something that I absolutely wasn't okay with. And so now I need to make some subtle adjustments that may create big outcomes, but they're really subtle adjustments. They're going, you know what? When I said it was okay if when we hang out, if we just talk about you and forget about me, I realized I'm not okay with that. I realized that's not the arrangement that I'm looking for in friendships. So we can
Yes.
try doing it differently. I'd love that because I'd love for our friendship to work. But I can't just show up and it all be about you anymore.
No, that's
And we
great.
don't
No,
say
I,
that. I mean, we just behave differently, and then it
hmm
either works or it doesn't.
Yeah. No, I think that's well said. And I think that part of me, like going back to that situation at the Orange Theory, is like I wouldn't want to make her feel okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that must have been hard for her to say, fuck that. No, I mean, I didn't have to be rude. Like I've seen people also but I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna fight. I'm gonna leave. And
Yeah.
that was being authentically me. I don't think I was overreactive. I was just like, I
Sure.
have to walk out of it. I'm frustrated. I didn't have to pretend I wasn't frustrated
Yeah.
because who
Yeah.
wouldn't be, right? Before it's like, oh, I've taken the high road. I've also, well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be the high road in my family. Like I'm gonna
Yeah.
do the right thing. And I'm
Look
like,
how much anger I can
yeah,
hold inside
isn't it
myself.
great? I'm just so wonderful. And now I'm like, wait, this new way of emerging is a little bit more of like I don't think I was being inauthentic, but I wasn't being truly true to myself. Like I wasn't sharing what
Yeah.
oh, that's not okay. Like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not going to participate in that.
Yeah. And you're
I
a
just had
super
another,
authentic guy, right? And so
yeah.
we never say I'm not being authentic, but the truth is, like, there's another level of truth inside of ourselves that it's uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable truth.
Mm,
It says, I'm not okay with this, but God, this poor lady that's got to say this, it's corporate. Like, so what? Like, you know what? I just need to let you know I'm not okay with this. Like, it's uncomfortable for all
yep.
of us. This sucks. I just took a 20
Yep.
minute, an Uber, it cost me $20. Like, I've been rushing. I called ahead. This sucks. And I got to go. Um, yeah.
And I'm just as I'm reflecting on it now, it's like, what? The other way I could have been aggressive and like, no, I want my damn money, talk to the manager now, right? And then she would
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
pushed back. But
Yeah.
she actually just saw that I was being authentic and naturally frustrated. So
Sure.
then just took care of it because she was like, oh, he's a good guy. He wasn't being a jerk. I would be frustrated too. And so anyway, there's these micro times in my life that I think that are showing up because I'm really, um, I'm just showing up. Part of it is that, we've talked about that safety inside of myself, right? I've always in the past been scanning the room to see who I could
Yeah.
connect with so I could find that person to bring safety. And, one of the things that you've helped me work on is really this. I mean, I almost get cry thinking about it because like this sense of like coming home to like fuck the rest around me. I mean, I'm not that way, but it's like, no, what do I need? And I don't need you to feel safe, right? And I can speak the truth because that's what's coming from me without worrying about how you're going to respond. I can do it in a kind and thoughtful and but real way.
Yeah.
And I think before, I would do that, but it would almost become to a point where I have to feel like I have to be aggressive to do it. Like, I'll fucking
Yeah. You
just
had to
tell them
get
how it's going to
angry.
be. Yeah, I have to get
Give
angry
yourself a
versus like,
right to go, now I'm
no.
offended. Do
Yeah.
you know how you're making me feel? I have to be angry at you now so I can get this out because this is so hard for me to say. Versus like, I have a truth I need to share with you.
And that's what I'm talking about. That's what I love about your approach to and the human blueprint because so often when we slap skills on people,
Hmm.
like, right, how can you be authentic at a core and safe so you can speak the truth as you're managing up or with your direct reports or your peers? I think if we create that sense of authentic safety and it's not your ego,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We
And
can
it
do it
doesn't
in a way that's
belittle
kind
people.
and yeah, it doesn't, yes, well said. No, the belittle part is huge. Yeah.
Yeah. I just need to let you know I'm not okay with this. It's
Hmm.
like, now you can reflect on that. Not, I need to let you know that you're a fucking asshole. And I think you're a piece of shit. And fuck you and fuck you and fuck you. And, but no, it's fine. It's fine.
Oh, it's fine. And you're inside, you're just like boiling, and then like it seeps out other ways. I'm like, if you don't share emotions, right, tell this all the time, it's going to come out in the back, at a meeting somewhere else, to your colleague in the back room,
Yeah.
talk,
Yeah.
this person's such a jerk. And then that's creates
Yeah. You
toxic
address it
work
with other people
cultures.
instead of the
Yes,
person that,
yes, right. It creates toxic work cultures or toxic teams. And but if you could create space, safety with each person inside, right?
Mhm.
And then you create safety in the team. I mean, you could say hard things in a way that people can hear it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, it's a safe environment. Right. And we
Hmm.
have that in our relationships, and we have that in our work environment. We're able to say things that normally either we couldn't say or were really hard to say or needed anger behind them, versus the idea of like we foster this environment where we can look at things that are uncomfortable. And the irony is that when we have that safe environment, maybe they're not really that uncomfortable. They just were when we were unsafe. They were when
Mm.
we were angry. And all of a sudden now, so we can have these conversations. People just go, oh, okay. And it resolves in real time. And we're like, well, shit, that's a lot easier than being angry for a week, and then never talking about it again.
Yeah. No, I think it's um, these new awarenesses that are subtle but huge.
Yeah, and it creates depth of relationship. I mean,
Mm.
one of the things I absolutely love about this, right? When you're able to work through stuff with people, that's depth of relationship. And when everything is just like, well, let's pretend I'm going to pretend I'm not upset. I'll just tolerate this. I'll tolerate that. I'll like this, and I really like that. And now we just kind of do this dance with each other and engage with each other, where we like each other and try to avoid the areas where we don't like each other, um, versus just having this authentic appreciation for like, and it all comes from being safe. Um, and it's I've seen that so much too. I'm just having this flashback when I was a teacher, and there's this woman we were leading some sort of I don't know, curriculum development thing for a bunch of teachers. And so we had this classroom full of teachers, and I thought it was ridiculous that we had to teach it, and I thought it was stupid, and I just didn't care. But I was tasked with it, and this poor woman that I was working with thought it was the most important thing in the world for everybody to know it because she was tasked with it, and she was just like trying to be all serious, and I'm like kind of fucking around, and I'm
I
like,
can see.
right, and she's just like, you know, at the end of it, I could feel she was so mad, and I'm like, and I went home thinking about it. I'm like, God, that was like, just because it's not important to me, like here she is, like I felt like like that just wasn't cool, and so it was a 3-part training, and so I contacted her the next day, or went and saw her the next day. I said, hey, I just need to let you know that I'm gonna do better next time. Like it wasn't important to me, and I let it discount it for you, who it is important for. And I'm sorry, and I'm gonna show up better next time, and I'm gonna be serious, and I'm gonna support you for us to teach this. And
Awesome.
like ended up having this great friendship from that. Whereas before, like we were kind of colleagues, we didn't really know each other that well, and didn't have that much in common. But after that, me screwing up, owning it, and then
Mm.
coming to her, all of a sudden, like I was one of her favorite people, and she was one of my favorite people. Um, Really funny, right? Like this whole idea of
Mhm.
that authenticity of, you know, and when we help other people own their stuff in a safe place, we also become their favorite people. Whereas before, we probably would become their least favorite person.
Mhm. It's where
But
you're coming from, right? And it's like if
yeah,
you create safety in yourself, it's coming,
yeah.
from
And the container you're in
yes, yeah.
that you create. Yeah, yeah.
No.
I was thinking about. I was having
I
a
could
good time,
see,
so I
what,
really
David,
shared
I'm imagining you in that environment. I could see you being like a kind of a smart ass a little bit,
some.
right? Was that who you were? Like I could see that. I don't see that in you now, but I could see that in your like you're like, are you fucking kidding? Like really? Like I
I'm
could see
forced
you
to do
not
things that I
saying
think are
that.
ridiculous. Yeah,
Yes, you're like, I'm not, why this is a waste of everybody's time. It's not helpful for the teacher, it's not helpful for me. Like, but no, I think those moments of when you can say, yeah, I think it creates a debt, right? And say, I apologize. Like it's not all,
yeah,
and you can connect on that discomfort or name it.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't
Because she
fair
was
to
feeling it too,
what was
right?
it?
She was totally feeling, she's like, probably like, you're an asshole.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure she was
then when you
hating
came
my
back and you
guts.
said, yeah, and that's horrible. Yeah. Co-leading with someone that you aren't aligned with, that's a hard, I've been there. So no, that's great.
Yeah, and so yeah, that's really cool. And so yeah, like I said, we're a third into this, right? And so we're gonna do 3 segments of this, which I think will be really interesting because I know when people go through the 10-week program, there's different segments of it. So you kind of been through the first two. There's that honeymoon period where it's just like, oh my God, it feels so good to have this freedom. And you talked to actually, I'd love to hear you if you want to share about like the freedom you felt of not feeling everybody else's
Well,
uh
no, I think it was so, yeah, was that after session two, it's when we went to this, we did the safety meditation of, the expansion. And I went to, a DJ with my husband and some friends. And I used to be like a little bit timidative of like, dancing or what are people watching me? And I fucking just, it felt like I was freedom. Like I was like freedom. I mean, actually one of the songs of the DJ was freedom. I was like, oh my God. So I texted you, I'm like, fuck you. And you're like, what happened? And I was like, No, but it was it's so funny. I was like, my feet are hot. I took my shoes off. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm dancing. If I'm going to dance and touch the earth, right? And I was dancing. And everyone else, when the moments that I actually was looking around and noticing people, and everyone was just like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, why aren't you feeling that? And it was just a moment of like the freedom of like, why not move my body and how I feel called to with the music and not worrying about what people think of me or if I'm doing it right or it was very liberating, I think, in terms of I'm super excited about I feel like I was already comfortable in my skin, but I think it's this next level.
Yeah, that's what it is. None of this makes us a different person. It just makes us even more of who we are,
Hmm.
really. And it cuts away our coping mechanisms. It cuts away those things we do to stay smaller, to or to fight against our surroundings, rather than it just lets us be more free. And so if we weren't trying to feel safer, if we weren't trying to feel more powerful, if we weren't trying to not feel other people, like who would we be? And that's really when we create that expansiveness inside of ourselves, that's who we get to be. We just get to be a deeper expression of self. And with that, that's that stage two, that calls coming from inside the building. All of a sudden now we start to revisit stuff that we haven't seen in a long time and go, I thought I resolved that. What's this shit showing up here? But the thing is, it resolves so fast because we're not tapped into the collective wound of it, as I've talked about it on the podcast before. We're really just feeling our little part of it, and we just don't want it in our living room because now we're living in our body, we're protecting this space, and we go, no, I'm not doing that bullshit anymore. I'm not going to think
Mhm.
that way. I'm not going to behave that way. Out. I'm not going to show up in that way. And this sense of ownership of like, this matters because before, when the whole world was my experience and it was just streaming into me, it can be really messy because it's always messy. But when we stop letting the outer world stream in and we just have our own quiet place inside of ourselves, it's kind of like having your own apartment all of a sudden, your own house all of a sudden. When you have roommates, like, yeah, well, there's a mess here and a mess there, and that's annoying. But now that this whole place is mine, I keep it really clean
Mhm.
because it's only me and I'm in charge. And there's no confusion about that. And so we
Mhm.
just stop holding space for ways of being that we know is us. Like we go, oh God, I can't believe the kitchen's a mess again. It was probably my roommates. When we live by ourselves, we go, kitchen's a mess again. One person made that mess and one person's cleaning it up, and we take care of
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally. No, I think it's right on of like just I could take clean up my own mess, own house. And I think the thing that I just am so excited about diving into more and finding ways to collaborate with is it's, when I talk about leadership, I talk about the being and doing of a leader, right?
Mhm.
And traditional leadership development, again, is like, here's a book, read the book, analyze this data, tell me what you think, and it's like, wait, hold on, who are we being? And then when we're doing it, it's a different experience. Like you were saying, like if I'm leaning into this, like the example of your teacher, that
Mhm.
your co-teacher is like, if you're being authentic and real and kind, but also sharing your frustration,
Mhm.
your doing shows up way different, right? And so I'm
Absolutely.
super excited about just fine tuning how I'm being. So I'm being
Mhm.
more of me, but also so when I'm doing, it shows that it's received differently
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
more authentically for me, right? And so
Yeah, and
that's
it
what I'm
feels more
really.
natural. Like,
And
and
this
it takes
process
less
isn't
recovery.
this process isn't about like, I've really enjoyed like it is about there's some talking and what am I experiencing, but then we go internal. You lead me through stuff that's really just connecting with myself
Mhm.
and giving me tools now, like, oh, do I need to do the expansion? Do I need to do the flow, the vertical flow? What do I need, right? Or do
Yeah.
I need to do the connecting all the dots? I think it's starting to get to know what I need, and it is a new skill set that's not coming from here. It's
Yeah.
connecting
Yeah.
with here.
Yeah, that's
So I
beautifully
really,
said. That's great, James. And
but it's not
yeah,
always comfortable though. I think shit's
but
coming up that I'm like, I'm like, why is this coming up? I don't, and I'm like, do I, I don't,
shit, I was
um,
fine. I
I
was
was
fine that you
fine.
didn't see it.
The other thing that I think that I've noticed, this is a subtle notice, is since I'm so heart-centered, I always get, I'll be before doing this, this is where everything sits. Like if I'm anxious, like there's my sensations come in my chest, and now it's kind of like sometimes I'm like my stomach and belly is I'm noticing is giving me data that I haven't necessarily. It's not because I ate something weird. You know what I mean? It's because it's like, oh, there's a sensation here. There's this emotion. There's something there. So I've been noticing it getting, further down in my body. So I'm having access more to um, other parts of. So I'm curious if that's normal or if that's kind of a.
Yeah, I think you're going to see that develop too, because a lot of it's sorting through things, and when we're okay with something, we're not okay with something, like a lot of that is foundational. And so that's that lower chakra stuff. And so part of that is like we have to resolve some things, because when that place was just like, are the lower chakras flowing or are they stuck? That was our data points. Right now, when you go, oh, now I'm expanding them and I actually have a place down there to drop into and to feel like stabilized and in my power. There's going to be a few things I'm going to need to resolve if I'm going to claim that space, because
Mhm.
the reason it was so small and tight is there was stuff that wasn't resolved. I hadn't given myself permission to feel powerful. I hadn't given myself permission to feel that stable, to have that big of an impact, to take up that much space, to make people deal with me. I had never given myself
Mm.
permission to do that. And so I just shrank it all in. And so when I open that up again, well, shit, now I need to deal with the fact that people have to deal with me. And the irony is, like, it's not like if we think about it from our hearts to go, oh God, having to deal with them. I'm in my heart and I have to deal with people having to deal with me. That feels way overwhelming. But when we drop down and go, oh, I need to deal with people having to deal with me, that feels pretty good. I really like that.
Yeah,
I like that people have to deal with me now.
it's much more a solid and grounded
Yeah.
approach
But
too.
up here, it doesn't feel good. It feels like, oh
No,
shit, I'm taking up
yeah,
space. I'm upsetting people. Oh no, did I say that wrong? Did they understand what I meant? Did I understand what I meant? Was I a little snarky? Like, versus like down here, it's like, oh yeah, okay,
that's what I meant.
yeah, that's what
And
I meant. I'm pretty clear.
and there it is.
Yeah, love it,
No,
love
I'm
it.
super excited to our next, 3 or 4 sessions just to clean some more shit up and get deeper into the work. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, you're
I'm
so
super
welcome.
excited.
And so let me ask you this, because I think it's funny when we talk about this, like picture of listening, going like, why the hell would I sign up for this? Right? Like we're like, wait a minute. So you're having but that safety of feeling like how good it feels to take on stuff. Um, that it's not like we realized that, I mean, I was just kind of what I was saying, like when we try to take on stuff from our heart, it feels overwhelming. It doesn't feel good. When we take on stuff from grounded into ourselves and from our sovereignty, from our alignment, it really feels great. It feels like we're taking charge. Um, and that when stuff comes up for us, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you know, when stuff comes up for us, like one of the goals of the aligned living work is to get excited when we see another level of our unresolved stuff, because we go, well, shit, I can resolve that now. And I
Mm.
know that's going to create something really great. And so has that started showing up for you yet? Because you're right at that stage usually where it's like, oh, I just found some more of my bullshit. This is awesome.
Yes.
Right?
No, totally. No, yeah, it's created a different level of awareness of, oh, that's what's driving this fear or this discomfort about others. It's
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
it's part of what's part of that's part of me that's showing up that maybe hasn't been dealt with, or it's been a coping mechanism. So I'm curious to kind of continue to pull the layers off. But it's also scary, right? It's like looking at yourself at a deeper level and what's your shit and what has served me, what has gotten me here. It's letting go of some of that shit. So it's like, oh, whoa, that's scary.
Yeah.
Like if I don't use that as kind of the fuel to act a certain way,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
what does that mean? Right? I think so. I think there's a little bit of
Yeah. Yeah. You're
fear, but I
right
also
in that.
know, yeah, and I also know from my life is the times that I've taken the biggest steps to
Hmm.
I've always said I'm gonna live from my heart, right? And every time, even though and I feel like that's what the courage comes from my heart. Like when I live, like
Hmm.
part of my motto is, if you live with your heart, courage and open heart, with life, anything's possible.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm walking into this with experience with you. And it's like really, even though it's scary and no, it's scary, but it's just different, right? I think it's a
Yeah.
deeper level
Yeah.
of
It's a
looking at your
lot.
shit that takes courage to do. So,
And, I mean, I think one of the things that's really cool about this is you're right at that stage in the 10-week program where it starts to transition into excitement when we discover our stuff. Because
mhm.
we start to get to a point where we trust that we're going to be able to resolve it. and we trust that it's going to create something amazing for us and the next level of us showing up, the next level of expansiveness. Because one of our goals starts to go like, oh my God, what if I can get even more expanded inside of here? What if I even had more space inside myself for me to bring to the world? What if I had another level of embodiment of myself and my own power and my own sense of what I'm here for, my mission that was embodied, and I get to bring that. And when we see a really clear formula that says, it's like me and what I have to bring minus my unresolved shit equals what I bring. And so we keep chipping away on that part of the formula that says my unresolved shit. Like every time I resolve that, like what I bring to the world goes up. And I wouldn't even say
Mm,
minus, it's probably like there's an exponential component to it because each time we resolve a little bit more, it's like we show up in a way that's not a one-to-one ratio, but it's like an expanded version of what we can bring. Um, and it's really I mean, it starts to become exciting because you go, I know this and that's that. And now I'm not
mm.
so worried about what this feels like because I know that that's like moments away for me. And so this doesn't have to be scary.
No, great. No. And it goes back to, what my beliefs that when at the human blueprint, when people are tapped in and tuned in on their soul's purpose,
Yeah.
their soul intelligence,
Yeah.
like people are on fire. And I think what you've given me is, more access to that because I think I've done a lot and even helped my clients with that. But I think
Mhm.
this tool, it gives you a deeper level of that. So I'm super excited to connect with
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
deeper purpose and soul. I think you've done a great job of building a process it's enlightening
Yeah.
and
Well, thanks.
grounding. So thank you.
Thanks.
So I'm super
Yeah.
excited and thank you for having me here today. I mean, I'm excited to join the continue the ride um sharing it. And thank you for having me on the show because I think
Yeah, James, it's great to, it's been so fun working with you. You're so ripe for this and so willing and already have done so much of the work. And so it's like we just get to step in and play. And of course it's scary at sometimes, and then it creates these, outcomes that are, that are compared to the scary part of it, just it's like a no-brainer. But it's funny when you were just saying that, the last thought I'll share is I got to download maybe a month ago that I talked about on the podcast, and it was like these words of embody was like trust, and then innocence from that trust, and then passion, and then power, and
mm,
that it felt like that's really what you were describing. It's like I go inside myself and I start to trust. And I create this container where I trust. And in there's this innocence, which is really, you could say it's authenticity. Like the innocence is like I'm not protecting myself. I'm not being anything except for me. I'm being authentic. And from that authenticity becomes this passion, right? Because when we're really being ourselves, we just get lit up by it. And then the result of that is power. And we feel so powerful to impact the world and impact everything. And it's not the formula that the world uses, but it's exactly what happens when we do this work, and I love it. And it's interesting that innocence and authenticity, it's innocence slash authenticity because it's really the same thing when we're talking about it from this level.
no, I think that's a great point. Because if you're, yes. And yeah, another thing that's bringing up is authenticity. I think sometimes people, when they haven't done the work,
Mhm.
I was just being authentic when I told you you were a fucking asshole, right?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, and
yeah.
that's
And
different, right? And so
I was
I'm
triggered,
super, I was
and so being
triggered by
authentic with
something.
myself because I'm not gonna take responsibility for this. I'm being
Yeah.
authentic right now. I'm gonna project this onto you because that's authentic, right? In a
But
way,
also
like
there's a
yeah,
space for
it's
that, right? And
authentic.
so how can you be, yeah. So I think, yeah, the nuance of like, of what does it mean to authentic? And this is a deeper level of that, right?
The
I think
innocence, right?
the innocence. I like
I'm not
that,
carrying an agenda. I'm not trying to protect myself. I'm not trying to blame anybody. I'm just innocent in this, and I'm curious and I'm open. And that level of authenticity is like to the soul. And when we
Mhm.
do that, passion just runs right out of it, and then we feel our power and go, well, shit. I've been protecting myself from my passion. I've been protecting myself from my power. But there's no way I'm going in there without the trust. And so when we develop the trust, we get to follow that pathway through, which is it's exciting.
Yeah, no, trust, innocence, passion, and power. I'm
Yeah.
ready for it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, great conversation,
Yes.
James. Really fun to have
Yeah.
you on here and blast working with you. And I'm sure the work will continue to do, collaborating. And yeah, so we'll have you on again in like 3 more weeks and see where you're
Wonderful.
at
No,
and
yeah.
see where your passion level is.
Yeah. The tip,
Yeah.
trust, innocence, passion, passion and power. You can start an acronym. That's what they do in all the leadership stuff is right, is to
Yeah.
have an acronym. You're onto something. That's great. All right. Thank you, David. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, James. We hope you enjoyed listening to today's podcast. And if you did, please subscribe so you can catch the next episode. If you want to learn more about the Aligned Living System and how it could support you in your life, check out davidwaldas.com.